You got here in one of the stranger paths in Valley history because you didn't come through electronics. You were here building tanks down at FMC. How did this all happen?
Accidentally. I mean, I think the best titled book in the world is Accidental Empires.
Yeah.
Because I think anybody who says they thought it all through and had it all figured out is just pulling your leg.
Yeah, but you had some kind of strategy, didn't you?
No.
No?
Sorry. Does that make for a bad TV show?
That's okay. Let's go back to your roots. You grew up in Detroit, right?
I grew up all over the Midwest, Indiana,
Yeah.
Illinois, Wisconsin, Kansas.
Your dad was with American Motors.
For a while, yeah.
What did he do?
He was started off in purchasing, then in marketing, and then became vice chairman.
Well, that's a pretty good growth path.
Yeah, not bad for a Harvard Business School grad.
Yeah. Did you learn at his knee? There's these stories of you, perhaps they're mythical, rifling through his briefcase at night to figure out what the old man did during the day?
Yeah, I would read along with him and see what notes he'd write. It was just fun to and I'd talk to him about it when he was barbecuing. I'd ask him what he was doing. And,
now, what age was this?
oh, just all through kind of
Elementary school, high school?
Junior high and high school, basically. And
So you want to be a businessman? I mean, that's kind of the age where you don't want to be a businessman.
well, I wanted to be a fireman when I got started. Then I went to college and I wanted to be an eye surgeon, and about 60% of the Harvard undergraduate class was pre-med. So I thought there's plenty of smart doctors, and I got involved in economics and decided I'd go to business school.
Well, with an 800 on your, did you get an 800 on your SAT in math?
Yeah,
Why would you go to pre-med? Why wouldn't you just go right into engineering or something like that?
I didn't even know you could get an engineering degree when I went to Harvard. There's fairly liberal arts oriented, and nobody explained to me that you could actually be an engineer. I might have been one, but it's just, I liked economics. It's a social science. It deals with people and with the science of micro and macroeconomics.
Okay, so tell me a little more about being a kid, because your dad starts out, he's like a middle manager, and by the time you're in high school, he's way up there in the corporation. That must have made some interesting transitions in your life. I mean, did you go from like middle-class suburbia to, upscale neighborhoods?
Yeah, we moved from Birmingham to Bloomfield Hills, but that didn't change my life much because I was too busy playing hockey. I'll be on the hockey team, I was on the golf team, I was on the swim team, I was on the baseball team, I was...
Which did you like best?
sailed,
was it golf at the time? I mean, you did real well in golf. But you stuck with hockey.
The two sports I loved were hockey and golf, and they usually didn't kind of overlap. I could play golf during the summer months and during the light, and play hockey at night or during the winters.
How about school? Were you good in school? You get quoted all the time as saying you majored in, parties and beer. But
no,
your grades kind of belie that a little bit.
I majored in golf. That's what I always say. But my goal, actually, by the time I got to college, was to figure out, and especially business school, was to maximize grade point average per hour invested. And I figured...
More time out in the links then?
Well, I just figured, and in fact, it's paid off pretty well. When the marginal rate of return on any particular activity starts to dip, move on to something else where you get a greater return. So, if you had to spend an extra 7x hours to get the A, that just doesn't make sense. You don't have time in real life to go do that. You don't have time in real life to do perfect at everything.
Okay, so you graduate from Harvard. Now, of all places to go, you just march right out into the Rust Belt. Why? Why didn't you, you could have gone to either coast. You had that great degree in your back pocket. Why would you go to the dying part of the country and take a manufacturing job?
It's the only place I could get a job. With my senior year, I was so focused on trying to make the NC2A championships in golf.
Missed it by one stroke, didn't you?
One swing. I missed it by a couple of strokes. I hit one OB coming down. I just kind of did a kind of a European Ryder Cup maneuver at the end. couldn't finish. And
do you still wake up in the middle of the night having, dreaming about that swing?
I wish I'd make it. It was at the Scarlet and Gray in Ohio, so I was dying to go back there and play in the NC2A championships.
What if you'd made it?
I'd have come in probably near last.
Yeah, but would it have changed everything?
No, actually.
Would you try to go pro?
Actually, when I was just out of school, I played pretty well in a couple of tournaments and played pretty well at some of the courses where the pros were playing. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do it. And my dad got me all set up with our pro to go play the Rabbit Tour in Florida. And I was all set to go do it. And Rockwell promoted me at the age of, I don't know, I was just 22 or something, to a fairly senior sales job where I had about a $7 million plan. And
that was the moment of truth, huh?
And I figured I don't like to travel, so what am I doing in this job?
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I thought, why do that and not really know if I'm going to make it? I'm doing well here in business. I got a big raise, and so I just played amateur tournaments.
So is that why you painted your office green? Everyone said you would paint the color of money. You were painting it for a fairway.
Well, I didn't do that. I left on a day before April Fool's Day, and I came in one day, and they'd carpeted my entire office with actual sod. There was a water hazard. There was a green elevated tee, a bench, a ball washer, and a golf cart. And so I played golf for most of the morning.
God, you must have felt right at home.
I did. I was driving around in the cart, took out a couple of cubicles, drove through the, knocked a couple tables over in the cafeteria. It was fun.
So you turn on TV sometimes and you watch PGA. Do you ever think, there but for, one swing, that'd be me out there? It's not a bad life.
Tiger Woods came over to my house over Labor Day weekend, and he hit a couple of balls with my driver.
Out of sight.
And I'm very glad I'm doing what I'm doing, because I looked at it, and after the second shot, I said, it's not the driver. In other words, it ain't the arrow, it's the archer.
That's right.
And I figured it's pretty good that he's golfing and I'm working in business. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this first job of yours. Why'd you take it, and what did you learn from it?
Well, the first job I ever got was just to go work in a plant in Centralia, Illinois. I was my old hockey coach from when I was 12.
Did you have jobs when you were younger?
Yeah, during the summers, I would work for Roger Penske. My first job was...
Pit crew?
Well, first of all, I started in his Chevrolet dealership washing cars in the new car wash rack for Harold for $1.75 an hour. And
That stunk, I bet.
Oh, I worked my butt off, and finally I got him to give me a raise to $2 an hour at the end of the summer. It was like pretty tough duty.
So you washed cars the entire summer?
Parked cars. I did every job in a car dealership you can imagine.
Did you ever get even close to a racetrack?
Well, yeah, during the weekends I would go out with his Goodyear race tire team on a truck, and we'd drive out to the races, and we'd be in the pit crew changing rubber to wheel, and then they'd roll the wheels off to the pits and change them on the car. But we were back there just covered in tire soot and mud, basically airing and balancing the tires.
For free? You did that for free?
Oh, I did it for like $3.50 an hour.
Well, there you go. What were you complaining about?
Hey, it was big money, let me tell you.
How about entrepreneurial endeavors? Instead of just working for somebody else, did you ever believe you could start your own company?
Yeah, I was sure when having grown up in Detroit, I was sure when I was 40 or 50, I would have saved enough money to start a tool and die shop of my own and maybe have 30 or 40 people working for me.
Well, you're still young. You can still have that in your future.
Yeah, let me tell you, it wouldn't be all bad right now.
Okay, so out of college, you go out to work in the Rust Belt. Tell me what it was like.
Well, it was kind of a little bit of a culture shock.
You got to go from Harvard to corporate world, in factory world.
Corporate, this was factory. This was UAW. This was out in the middle of nowhere, an hour and a half from anything bigger than a silo, out in the hinterlands of southern Illinois. A place called Centralia, Illinois, working in a plastics plant where we molded plastic parts for Corvette hoods and camper tops.
Oh, so you had like fiberglass flying around everywhere?
Fiberglass dust everywhere. The temperature during my first summer would be 110 outside and about 130 in the plant. First couple of weeks I was there, they took about 6 or 7 employees out on stretchers from heat exhaustion. People would cook their TV dinners on the presses as they go up and down. So about 20 minutes before lunchtime, all of a sudden you'd see these TV dinners going up and down on these fiberglass presses.
So you just stand there and go,
well, the first
damn, I'm sure glad I got my degree from Harvard. I can go work here.
Well, the first 3 days, all they did was have me take a couple of the employees' kids who were there for summer jobs and supervise them cleaning up the lot outside. And so I'd go out there and I was working with them, and about the...
You must have felt right at home after all the years at Penske.
They weren't real happy. Yeah, with Roger Penske, you work hard, let me tell you. I used to be on overtime Wednesday afternoon, and that was before I went to the races. I was working 90 hours a week for Roger, so I got there and I started working these kids pretty hard. And the second day, one of the parents hauled me aside in the plant, practically grabbed my collar and says, "Quit working my kids so hard." I'm like, I can't imagine. My parents always told Roger, work him to the bone. So it was kind of interesting to learn that actually parents didn't want their kids working hard. I thought that was kind of strange, but what the heck.
Will they ever let you in out of the parking lot?
Well, about the 4th day into it, one of the foremen got fired for coming in drunk. So they asked me at the age of 21 to become foreman. So all of a sudden I was foreman for 13, what you might call lifers.
Oh, great.
People in their average age was like 35 or 40.
They got kids older than you.
Oh, absolutely. And many kids older than me, and so all of a sudden I'm their boss, and it was quite an experience.
Did you understand why your predecessor got drunk?
Yeah, I suppose. But,
well, how long did you stay in this fun career?
Well, I did that for 3 months, and then they transferred me to Ashtabula, Ohio, which we affectionately referred to as the Mistake on the Lake, and I worked in another fiberglass plant there, and I did 2 jobs there. I was in the 10-hour early morning shift as foreman in the finishing line, and then...
Did your internists now, when you have physicals, ask you what all those fibers are in your lungs?
Right. You can't imagine what it's like. And then the afternoon shift, I'd schedule the plant. We didn't have ERP systems back in the old days, and you just got a big wide sheet of paper and did spreadsheets by hand. This was pre-spreadsheet, so I would basically plan the production for the next day, and then I'd go home and pass out.
Now, did you assume this was going to be your entire life? You were going to work up the chain this way?
Well, actually, I ended up getting sick, and I told my boss one day, I don't feel well, and he said, you don't look well, and I drove home from Ashtabula to Detroit that night, and I got home about 10 o'clock at night, and by 4 a.m., my mom took me into emergency as I was just fundamentally exhausted, and it turned out I had mono that had degraded into hepatitis, and they strapped an IV bag on me and tried to get me back on my feet. And so I had to take a week off, and the bosses in Detroit basically moved me back to corporate, and I became a sales engineer and then a sales rep for the next year and a half before I went back to school. So that was the start of my career.
That's almost like the end of your career.
Well, I learned I need to pace myself, and I need to listen to my body a little more.
Okay, so now the next part of the story that we all read about is that you got hot on some babe at FMC in San Jose and decided to move to California.
She was an attractive young lady.
Yes.
Yeah, I did tell my boss. After business school, I went to FMC Corporation in Chicago. I spent one winter out there and decided that's not so good, and fell in love with this gal who lived out in California at the tank plant. And I told my boss, either you move me or I quit. I moved out, and 2 months later I quit anyhow. So, moral of the story is don't listen to some young kid in love.
Let's talk about business school for a moment. You went to Stanford Business School?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I went to at least half of the classes, but I was
Well, that's a good
enrolled
start.
I was enrolled for 2 years.
How'd you get in Stanford? You took a few tries, didn't it?
Yeah, I tried to get into Harvard and Stanford Business School out of college, and neither would take me. Tried again a year later, neither would take me, and finally...
Was it because of your grades or because of you didn't have enough experience, or?
My theory is that the business schools don't like to take people out of school because they don't know if they're going to be any good, and they only like to take people who have proven they're going to be superstars so that they can then give them a degree and take credit for everything that happens thereafter.
And then when they get rich, get the money out of them to put the new building.
That's all about, yeah, you name it. That's why they keep track of you so hard after you leave.
Okay, FMC, you quit. You come out to work out here, and then you quit. Then what?
Well, Bill Reducial had actually called me, and he was buying computers at the time from McGraw-Hill, from this little company called Onyx. It was the first company to put the Unix operating system on a microprocessor, and they'd just gone public. And
Did you know anything about computers?
No.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I knew a lot about manufacturing.
Yeah.
So I walked in and got the job, first day I walked in and I said, what are all these big black things? And they said, those are disk drives, big old 8-inch Winchester disk drives. And I said,
Do they have like a scared look in their face when you ask that question?
well,
Like,
I said,
we
why are
thought
these
you
little
knew
red
more?
tags on them? And they said, well, these are defects and we don't know, we haven't gotten around to it. And I said, how much do they cost? And I looked and there was about $4 million worth of inventory on the wall, side of the wall. And I looked at the tags and I said, what's NTF? And they said, that's no trouble found. I said, well, how do they test them over at this was our sister company? And they said, they just build them and ship them over here if they don't work. I said, well, why don't we take one of our computers over there, have them plug them into our computer, and if they don't work, don't bother sending them over. They thought, well, that's a good idea. So we sent them all back, put a computer over there, and all of a sudden, we generated about $4 million in cash by putting test procedures at their factory before we sent them over, and wrote up specifications on what the disk drive ought to do before they're allowed to ship it over. And so I didn't need to be a rocket scientist to figure that one out.
Now, did you learn this in your factory days or from your old man?
I think this was like so brain dead logical that I don't know where. I mean, that's kind of like learning. Where do you learn to breathe?
I was trying to think of a precedent for you in this industry. And the only person I could think of was Charlie Spork way back in the early chip days. And he was a Midwestern factory guy who came out and said, can't we just like systematize this process instead of a bunch of guys sitting at workstations and making this up each day? And it seems to me that's exactly what you did in the computer industry, because they were making it up each day. No one had actually taken it from an art to a process.
Well, when we started Sun, there were 4 27-year-olds who were the founders. I had 3 years business experience, which was more than the other 3 founders combined. So the good news, and I didn't go to all my business school classes, so the good news is we weren't constrained or, in fact, hampered in any way by conventional wisdom.
That was the good news. The bad news was you didn't exactly know how a computer worked at the time.
Well, we had some pretty smart technologists. I think some of the problem is you get the really smart technologist trying to be a manager, and the manager trying to be a technologist, and it doesn't make any sense. So we have 2 very clear tracks here.
Okay, let's talk about the formation of the company then. How exactly did Sun get formed?
Well, I was working at this little computer company, and a buddy of mine from school, Vinod Khosla, had basically done a startup already since we had gotten out of school in the first 2 years, and was looking for something else to do because he'd fundamentally had a parting of ways with the previous startup.
Well, when you and him were sitting around drinking beers in grad school, did you talk about starting a company? I mean,
He did. No way I was gonna. I'm too conservative. I'm not a risk taker. So he wanted to, and he went off and did it, and I said, more power to you. But then he wanted to start another one. So while I was still working at FMC, we started one in our spare time at night. It's called the Data Dump. It was rent a word processor by the hour. We used big 4-phase centralized processing units to do timeshare in an office by the campus. We went by Stanford, by San Jose State. Totally lost all of the investors' money, including some of our own. We each lost about $5,000 of our own money, and we didn't have it. I mean, we were dipping into...
Hello, Mom and Dad?
Yeah, exactly right. And so finally we started Sun together. And the way that all came about is he ran into a guy at Stanford who had invented the Stanford University Network Workstation, the Sun Workstation.
Right.
And he had all kinds of people calling him up saying, I want one. But he couldn't build them. And he had parts all over his desktop at Stanford. And so Vinod met him and said, let's go start a company. I know we can build a market out of this. And Andy said, well, the big problem is, this was Andy Bechtolsheim, he said, the big problem is we can't make them. He said, I got a buddy who can make Unix computers by the boatload. So he brought Andy over and I showed him our factory. And that Andy left and I went out with Vinod.
Vinod didn't say, I got a guy who can build them, and he's
didn't
lost every bit of money that we've ever put into any other company we've worked
No, he didn't
together on.
explain to me that he was actually recruiting me. So we went out to dinner. And we were fine dining at the time over a Big Mac, fries, and a large Coke. And he said,
the Mickey D's strategy meeting.
Yeah, so he said, when are you quitting? I said, what are you talking about? I'm making 32 grand a year. I got a great job, you know.
I get to drive the tanks.
Yeah, well, no, this was actually at Onyx. So I was beyond tanks. I was actually into computers at this point. And he said, you can't back out on me now. I said, what are you talking about, back out? You haven't offered me a job. He said, you don't offer founders a job. You're a founder. So.
Ooh, did that work on you?
Oh, yeah. The next day I went in and quit. And we started the company and raised a little money. About $250,000. We got the thing started, took it profitable in the first, we incorporated February 24th, and we were profitable in May.
Any doubts at the very beginning? You know, you're sitting on the wooden boxes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm a founder now.
No, there weren't any doubts. There was just no question it wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
I mean, it was just like, kind of like, there was no way we were going to be disappointed if it didn't work out. And we also had a saying at that point, if we're going to jump in the pool, we're going to do a belly smack and empty the pool out, because we're not going to go in and try and slip. We're going to go like crazy. If we're going to go belly up, we're going to just empty the pool out while we do it. So we took a big, huge swing at it.
You having fun now at all?
It's
Not
more,
at all. More satisfying.
It's more satisfying. I mean, it's incredibly satisfying. Is it fun? Is it fun? You know, 2 nights ago I flew out to Florida, got in at 1:30, and was up at about 6:30. I flew back last night and got in about 2:30. Did email till 4:30 and was up at 6:30. And you know, those bags under my eyes are real. But is that fun? No, that's not fun. Is it rewarding? It's absolutely. I mean, you meet with shareholders. You meet with employees who tell you about, you know, they put their kids through school or they bought their parents a new home. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than that. That's pretty cool.
How about your kids? How old are your kids?
3.5, 1.5, and 3 months. 3 in car seats.
So
all boys.
When you're sitting on that plane, you must feel the tug to get home fast.
My wife's very good. She puts a pile of pictures in my briefcase every time I leave, so I always have pictures of them.
And also a good motivation to get home.
Absolutely.
Looking at those pictures. How do you balance the two? I mean, you're at a point in your life where you've got the huge demands of this corporation, but you've also got this private self you've got to take care of, the family. How do you balance them?
You don't. I mean, I don't spend enough time at the office. I don't spend enough time at home. But you just do the best you can.
It can't be balanced at this point.
Well, I don't know anybody that's balanced. Anybody who's spending all of their time with their family may not be contributing. And I mean, I feel that, and I tell my employees this all the time, that in town halls I look at them and I say, listen, this is the most intelligent, capable, bright, experienced, well-educated, just flat-out capable group of folks on the planet. And I said, you have a curse. You're cursed with the ability to work very hard, very productively, and very effectively. And you have no choice but to exercise and live within that curse and do a great job. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want you to go spend time with your family. I do. And I tell them, do as I say, not as I do. But understand there's a whole bunch of people who don't have the ability to contribute. I believe in the 80-20 rule or the 95-5 rule. And if you're blessed with the ability to be educated, have a great mind and body that allows you to work hard, you really owe it to yourself.
Because I'm always intrigued. Usually CEOs don't make comments like you do at this
Like
point
what?
in their career.
Like Microsoft?
Bomber and Butthead?
Well, that was a top 10 list.
Okay.
That was funny.
Oh, of
if you
course it's
saw
funny.
it,
It's hilarious.
Well,
But
so most CEOs aren't hilarious. That's their
CEOs
problem.
of multi-billion-dollar corporations. Usually they get the point. It's like, I don't dare say this stuff anymore because the PR people tell me not to say it.
They do.
Yeah.
They
just
tell
ignore
me all the time not to say it. I can't help myself. I sat through so many speeches and presentations and classes where the professor or the speaker was boring, and it was like somebody was sticking a poker in my eye. I was so bored. It hurt. And so I always go up and try and be, at least 3 parts entertaining and 7 parts content. And, it's stuff that's funny is stuff that's true. So when I say stuff, it's usually got a really strong hint of truth, and that's why people laugh at it.